everyone. Welcome back. Welcome to our last session of iDTX 2023. And we're ending on a good one. We have Cara North with us to discuss assessment and evaluation upskilling. So, without further ado, I will get out of the way, hand the stage over, and just so you all know, in the comments or in the chat, sorry, I have posted a link to the AHA slides that Cara's using for this session. Right, the stage is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Tom, and thank you for the flexibility today. Sometimes client needs calls, so thank you all for sticking around a little bit longer. So hi, Jennifer. Hi, Ricky. Hi, Cassie. Hi, J Rock, and hi, Jane, and hi, everyone else. I thought I'd do something a little bit different with this session. And if you know me, you know I'm a big fan of applying content and being able to walk away from an event like iDTX and be able to actually apply it to your work. So I thought what I'd do is I'd make a little calendar for us. And if you don't mind, we're going to time hop into next week. And I'm going to talk to you about things that maybe you should be doing next Monday and Tuesday to upskill yourself in assessment and evaluation. So let's see if this will work. Come on, it's a thinking here. Okay, so here is what is on the agenda for next week for us. So again, we're jumping a little bit into the future. And hi, Andy Vogel, a good friend of mine. Good to see you here as well. So what we're going to do on Monday is we're going to talk about why assessment and evaluation are critical. I'm going to run a little bit of an experiment with you. And then for next week on Tuesday, we're going to think about what are some of the common assessment and evaluation issues that can come up in learning and development, but we're also going to talk about how we can fix them. Okay, so hope you're ready. This will be fun, I assure you. And I will tell you, anybody mentioned in this presentation, they gave me their permission, so please don't be angry at me. So I want to start with a story. I want to start with the story of the two Johns. And so the two Johns, dear friends of mine, they gave me their permission to be put in here. And let's just say hypothetically that you are a learning development director and you are working with the two Johns, okay? And let's say you're working in a pretty high stakes environment, okay? And both of these Johns, you rolled out an e-learning, they got 100%. That's what they got. That is the metric that you have, okay? So you know that both these two Johns got 100% on their e-learning. So we know how quickly things move in the work environment, so you have to make decisions pretty quickly. So what I'd like for you to do is, if you haven't joined already, please join either by scanning the QR code or going here to the ahaslides.com/iDTX. Thank you again for putting that in the chat for me, Tom. But let's say that you have a critical task that you need executed. Both of these gentlemen got 100% on that e-learning. So I want to know right now, you have to choose, who do you pick to execute the task? So you should be able to go on here and vote. I have some voting music for you, and we're going to see how the results go. So I'll give you a few moments to do that. Who do you pick? I mean, they both got 100s. Why no more for Jonathan Rock? Are you just voting for yourself multiple times, J-Rock? It's okay if you are. The beard's trustworthy? Okay, that's fine. They both got 100%, so who are you picking? Okay. I see 28 people in here, so please keep voting. See how this goes. All right. Okay. So pretty even. Okay. So why do you think I asked you to do that? Let's talk about it for a minute, okay? 100% on the e-learning. Very, I'd say, relatable metric a lot of us have in our learning and development departments, but yet Jonathan Hill was picked a little bit more than Jonathan Rock. So I'd love to know in the chat here, and some of you are putting, but seriously, besides the brain, the accent, the glasses, whatever, why did you pick the person that you did? Okay, so I want to know why you selected. So have a couple call outs here to bias. Have somebody, Kate here says, you know, it's only about the metrics. Yeah, Laura is like, well, maybe you're thinking about the metric that we have. I'm going to be bold here, and I'm going to say that I think that when our only metric, our only performance metric is an end of course evaluation or a formative assessment, we are setting both of these Johns up to fail. Okay. Now, why would I say such a thing? Well, there's a lot of reasons, right? So, what if I told you that e-learning they took a year ago? I hadn't seen anyone ask me about, you know, how long ago was it that they got the 100? Let's say it was a year ago. Do you think either of them would be able to spring into action immediately? Right? Or what if it was something that they were able to just, I don't know, do the Ariana Grande thank you next and keep clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking and getting to the end, and they're able to just guess the correct answer and get the 100? Would that change your mind at all? So I want you to really challenge what I think that I'm going to say tradition here has made you think about what assessment should be. I think a lot of times this is modeled because that is what we have went through in our own education experience. A lot of us have went to school. A lot of what we you know, did in school, it was on a high stakes exam, whether that's admission to college or admission to graduate school or what have you. And you know, we're really setting people up to fail if this is the metric. And to be brutally honest, when you are in a leadership role, this metric might get you in the door and this metric might be good enough to start, but as you move up your learning development career, you are going to be called out on a metric like this, because it just simply isn't enough in order to really see what performance looks like. And really, again, preparing people. When we only have something like this where there's only just one little piece of data, that is basically saying, without saying, of course, that you expect 100% compliance and they got 100%. Okay. But now I'm going to make it even more challenging for you, and I'm going to uncover another layer of the onion. So, what if they needed additional support? Okay, so not only was the assessment probably not up to the standard that it needed to be, but let's say, Jonathan Hill, your evaluation was a net promoter score. You asked them, hey, Jonathan Hill, how likely are you to recommend this course to a friend? And they rated a 1, but you never got any clarity around it, or you didn't get additional information. But I would also say, what in a net promoter score tells you about the transfer of learning and performance? I'm still waiting for an answer on that one. John, J-Rock, I can't with you right now. Or let's say that you didn't even have an evaluation in the learning experience. And let's be honest, that happens a lot too. And so, you know, let's say that, for example, J-Rock wanted to paint his figurines on his lunch break. And the lunch break that he had was the only time he had in the week to finish it. Because I think another part of this that doesn't get talked about enough is having people have the time to actually take the training. So often it's thrown at them on top of all the other responsibilities and stressors that they have in their day to day. That's why we see people put it off to the last minute. And admittedly, I put things off to the last minute as well, because I often don't have time to take my own training. So we need to think about these factors if we're really wanting to upskill in our assessment and evaluation strategy. Because in the end of the day, both Johns are very critical to our organizations. And I'm a firm believer, if you do this work, that you are in the people business, not the person business. All right. We want the good of everybody. We want everyone to succeed and everyone to win. Okay. So let's talk a little bit here about assessment and evaluation. So if you're still on the fence and you're thinking, well, I don't know, or that'll never work in my organization, here's 4 value adds, and there's so many more, but 4 that I want to just talk about briefly that I feel like assessment and evaluation can add. So the big one is I think it gives value back to the business. One thing that I've been concerned about, and I'm sure several of you that are watching this either live or maybe on the replay have been worried about, are unfortunately, we've heard a lot about various layoffs and impacts to folks' jobs in this economy. All right. So when we are content pushers, so to speak, where we just build content and push it out and then go to our next project that we have, we're transactional. We only have one role, right? We push out content. What I think that assessment and evaluation can beautifully do is it can really help add value back to the business, and you're going to be able to add that value and advocate for people in a richer way if your assessment and evaluations are better. Okay. So again, going back to the example of both of them got 100% on the e-learning, you want to make sure that people are able to, again, prove demonstrations, right? That they're able to apply it. But another piece of it too is making sure that it's being evaluated and measured. Okay. Another one that I think doesn't get enough love and support when we think about assessment and evaluation is stakeholder engagement. Now, in my career, the best learning experiences that I've had the privilege of either developing myself or leading a team to develop, there was incredible engagement across the enterprise, because no matter what we do, even after we build the learning experience, something that doesn't get enough attention is what happens after the fact, right? And I am still looking back here. I don't have a cape, and you probably don't have one either. And it should not only be learning development's responsibility for the evaluation and making sure that people are supported. We have folks that we work with that we can partner with in our organizations to help us, whether that's frontline leadership, operations, whatever that looks like in your own organization. But we don't know that, and we can't get them on our team if we don't engage them. We don't just want to be working over here, the learning and development people doing their own thing, when at the end of the day, we can be a piece of it, but we are not the whole of it. Okay. So you need to have that stakeholder engagement. And by talking about assessment and evaluation, that helps us. This is really controversial, but you can actually talk to people. You can see if people need additional support and guidance and how you can improve. And you would be shocked in how much just something like that, where somebody can see how feedback that they've given's been acted on, or how they can get additional support, can turn the tide in your just learning development department. I saw it in action. I led a team in the manufacturing space, and I'll never forget my boss telling me that he couldn't believe I actually asked people if they needed additional help after something. Blew his mind. He couldn't believe that. And I was like, well, what? I know, right, Ricky? I'm really, really pushing it here, talking to people. Now, with the complexities of our modern organizations, I completely understand it's a little bit more difficult to, get to that. But going back to what I said about stakeholder engagement is, lean into that, right? Talk to our stakeholders. Hey, how's your team responding to that content that we pushed out? What additional support are they needing? What else can we do to help? You would be surprised how well that goes over. And sorry about the weird spacing on that. I'll blame AHA Slides for that. Performance centered for the last one. And so what we're talking about here is content plus context. Okay. And I think so many of us are so focused on the content, we forget the context. And without the context, there's no application. Without the context, there's no what's in it for me. And that is often truly the missing magic sauce, if you will, of what we do. And strong assessment evaluation can help deliver that. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about assessment. So My opinion, take it for what it's worth, is I think that it is phenomenal if you have these kind of assessments in a learning experience. I don't think one on its own works well. I think as a team, they are the dream team. And I think that you should strive to have all three of these types if possible. And it doesn't all have to be in a one and done, right? There's other ways that you can space that out and get some additional support. But the first one is a formative assessment. And the way that I remember what that is for learning. Might think of it as a knowledge check or reflection. Okay. So that's opportunity for people to pause, think about the content, and think about, okay, am I mowing what you're growing? Okay. Am I able to follow along? Do I understand what's going on? Is there clarity? Okay. Summative, I think of that as of learning. So that's demonstrating the application. Now, do I think that that should always be an end of course exam? Absolutely not. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that. And last but certainly not least is what I call a work-based scenario, essentially giving that additional context to your content. Okay, so you're really wanting to apply, okay, here's all this information. All right, how do I build the widget? What is it that I need to do? And I'm going to give you my secret method on how to get there that please steal, because it is really good, especially for setting you up for success in not only your assessment, but also your evaluation. All right. So when I talk about evaluation, there's also 3 different types. And I also think that this is another dream team that doesn't get enough love and support. And I think that if at all possible, you should strive for all 3. Okay. So the first is the program evaluation. And what I'm talking about a program is the effectiveness of the learning experience campaign, whatever you decide to call it. Okay. So when I'm thinking about program, there's a lot of different ways that you can look at that. Of course, you're probably familiar with the Kirkpatrick 4 levels of evaluation. You may also be familiar with Dr. Will Thalheimer's LTEM model. You may also be familiar with Phillips' ROI model. There's a bunch of different models out there for program evaluation. That may be the one that you're probably most familiar with. Individual evaluation. Now, am I talking about the 2 Johns, going back to them, their 100% score? Maybe, but that is what I will call a single data point. What you're really wanting to do at the individual level is really hone in on, are people able to apply this to their jobs, and what additional support and guidelines do they need? These are things that you actually, are you ready for it, need to talk to people to get. Okay. I still don't have a crystal ball. I still can't read minds. You need to talk to people, whether that's through their frontline leadership, whether that's to them directly, whether that's to however, but you need to get that information for people to be fully supported. Okay. And last but certainly not least, longitudinal. So, what are the long term impacts of it? And that can be through something like a higher level of Kirkpatrick or an ROI, but it could also be things that I know, Ricky, I'm really pushing it here talking to people, right? But it's so critical, you all. I mean, we're in the people business. How can we support people without talking to them? Seriously, how? Come on. But with longitudinal, we really want to focus on maybe their attitude, their career progression. There's things that often higher levels of like ROI, Kirkpatrick, et cetera, don't necessarily encompass. And they are very, I would say, minute to your individual organization. It could be somebody, feeling confident in applying for I don't know, an internal promotion, or, whatever that looks like. So I think that these 3 pieces of evaluation are also very critical to track in your programs. So I think that with good assessment and good evaluation, it is a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for learning and development. Now, full transparency, I actually do not like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but my partner does, so I put that in here for him. So with complimentary, You're looking at things that can stand alone and be good, but they're even better together. And so sandwiching in your assessment and your evaluation, it's really going to help you, again, be more robust when you are thinking about your various programs. Okay. All right. So let's be real. Okay. You're like, Cara, this sounds wonderful. Gosh, I'd love to do this, but I have these things called barriers in my workplace. So let's talk about it a little bit, okay? So I think one key barrier that happens is I don't have time. We're already so slammed. We already have so many things going on. I don't have time to get this done, okay? And I will, again, give you another dose of reality. You have to make time to make the change. You have to. You absolutely have to invest in it. You have to get buy-in. There's a lot of things you have to do to remove this barrier, okay? But I realize that this is definitely a big one when you think about it. Another one that you have to think about is just, I'm going to say, the amount of planning that it takes, right? This is something that does take a lot of planning. You have to think about it strategically. You have to think about what are kind of those incremental small wins, those little things that you can change quickly to, again, start making progress. And I also align this, and I don't know if this is a fair comparison or not, to something like, let's say that you're taking your DEI and accessibility strategy more seriously and you're looking to make that better experience. You don't just flip a switch and everything is ADA compliant, right? It takes time, incremental steps. And I want you to also think about your assessment and your evaluation in that same manner, okay? So as we're talking about these things, please don't be hard on yourself. Please don't be like, gosh, I don't know where I've been. It's fine. It's a work in progress, but own it and just know that it's just going to take some time. And it's also going to take a lot of kind of strategy and resources to get there. Another one is the way that's going to be communicated. Okay. So maybe you don't have a way to talk to people in your organization. I have worked in organizations where I didn't have access to the end stakeholders. And I will tell you, I absolutely hated it. Hated it to the point that it was one of the reasons I left the role, because I was like, this isn't going to work for me. Like, I need to know how to support people, and this just isn't the right fit for me. So to the degree that you can marry this and say, if we're going to take assessment and evaluation more seriously in our organization, we need to talk to the people. You have to have that buy-in. So however you can build that, however you can talk about it, you want to plan for it. Another one is just nasty people. there, there are just some interesting folks in our organizations. I've dealt with, I don't know how many throughout my career, that no matter what you do, they want to kind of get in there and be resistant to change or whatever that is. And I'd say a way to overcome that is to really look at the big picture win. That this is not just about the learning development department, you all. It's about the organization. And by strengthening the assessment and evaluation, it is making the organization healthier. It's making people more competent and more confident, the two C's, which are great. So it's not just about the icky person that doesn't want this good for them, but it's about the organization as a whole and being able to sell it. And last but certainly not least, of course, money, right? Time is money in our organizations. And so to the degree that you can plan, some of the most impactful changes that I've made in my career in assessment and evaluation, I didn't spend any extra money on. I used tools that we already had. Specifically, I've used a SharePoint to build just a kind of on-the-fly knowledge management system before. I've used Microsoft Forms as an intake form before. So, I mean, really stretching your resources to the degree that you can and thinking about how to incorporate them in ways that you don't. That's a nice way to make some stretch to your budget, because I will tell you, A lot of organizations have what's called a champagne taste on a tap water budget. And I've worked at many of those organizations, but you also have to look at it from a degree of a lens of frugality, rather, of how you can just kind of make the most with what you have. Okay. So now I'd like, again, some interaction here. Go ahead. I'd love for you to submit here. What are some of the barriers that you're going to add in from your own experience? Or maybe you're just sitting here like, yeah, I'm interested, but what are some of the barriers that maybe you are facing? I'd love to see those comments. I'll give you a moment to do that. I know I'm on a small delay here. All right, got some typing. I love it. So what are some barriers that you would add that I didn't cover? I should have had music for this one too. Sorry, I didn't. I don't even have like a good corny joke on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, tough leadership for sure. Yeah, that's a big one. Um, ooh, apathy. Yeah, maybe they just don't care. Maybe they don't see the need to care, right? That is a big one. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that. Pete says maybe they think that that's beyond your role, like you need to stay in your lane. Yeah, not trusting expertise. Okay. Yep, that could be a big one too. Low priority. That breaks my heart, but I know I know that that's a big one. I love the person that said CYA. Be ready. I have an analogy for that here in just a moment. Um, yep, caring, staying your lane. Governance. Ooh, that can be tricky too, depending on where learning development sits in the org, who has governance. Tall poppy. Yeah. Yeah, I dealt with a tall poppy. So for those that maybe don't know what that means, it means that when it looks like one person or department is rising, somebody's looking to take you down. That's essentially what tall poppy is. I feel like women deal with that quite a bit, at least my own experience. Checkbox mentality. Yeah, we just one thing off the list will go. Um, ego of partners. Yeah, that's a big one too. Okay, entry level specialist. I feel like I'm seen as an order taker, then a change maker. And I this may be another spicy take, but if anybody, influencer or not, says that they've never been an order taker, they're full of crap. Everybody's been in that role, so don't beat yourself up. It just takes a while to get to where you're in a position or you're supported to make that change. So please don't be hard on yourself. Yep, and time. All right, very good. Yeah, me too, Tom. I mean, being real. Okay. All right. So from that section of your Monday of next week, here are some takeaways. Okay. So one is that don't just think of assessment as one and done. Don't think of evaluation as one and done, but there's going to be multiple ways that you can approach this to make your cases stronger. Okay. And even better, if you have your assessment and your evaluation to complement one another. All right. Peanut butter and jelly, make them a sandwich and make it yummy. All right. Most people, when you say assessment, they don't like that word, and that test anxiety, if you had it as a kid, it goes with you probably in adulthood into the workplace. So thinking of ways that you can spin that to where it's practice, it's application, it's whatever. You don't have to necessarily use the word assessment if that's a concern. And also know that some people work harder at, I'm going to say, cheating. And I use cheat in quotations, but like getting it done, getting it off of their own to-do list and going through the motions in either evaluation or e-learning. They're just clicking it to get through. So that is, I think, the true danger in only relying on a sole metric. Okay, so I hope I've made my case for that. But I want to prove some of this to you because there still may be doubters amongst us. And I love whoever said the CYA, you set me up beautifully here. But there are a lot of common assessment and evaluation mistakes that we do when we write and put things together. And often I do think that assessment and evaluation is portrayed and put as a I don't know, I'll say a safeguard to what I'll say cover the accountability bum of the organization, to say that you had an assessment, to say that you did have an evaluation. Okay. You know, that's all well and good, but we really need to help people apply the content. Okay. Oh, thank you. They're a little bit bananas in pajamas, maybe. Did I go there? No, maybe. Okay. All right. But yeah, so you really need to focus on how can you make it beyond just that cover of accountability from a compliance standpoint, but how can you actually use assessment and evaluation to support people? Okay. So we're going to play a game, if you don't mind. So go ahead. You should be able to enter this and then pick your favorite emoji and put your name. And there may or may not be a prize at the end. Oh, J-Rock, I can't with you. Not today. It's been a long day already. Can't do that. Yeah. Jennifer has a good point here about getting buy-in from stakeholders for spending time. It can be a problem for sure. All right. Welcome, Darcy. Is that a porcupine? I like it. All right. Got some people coming in here. I like the unicorn brook. J-Rock, never a better emoji for you, except maybe a leg, but that's an inside joke. All right, we got snow person. Julie. Okay, some good stuff there. Hedgehog, okay. Very cool. All right, give you all a few more moments. I know I'm on a little bit of a delay here. Don't want to leave anybody behind, because this is going to be so much fun. The clown, it's me, is quite frightening. I don't know who you are, but I'm frightened. So glad nobody's used like something I'm legit scared of yet, which is good. Oh, no problem. Okay. All right. I think maybe I have everybody. I don't have a good number, but we have 26, 32 people logged in. Maybe people just hanging out, don't want to play. That's fine. So what if I told you that if you write questions in assessment poorly, people can usually guess the correct answer? Don't believe me? I'm going to venture that the majority of you are going to ace this without knowing what I'm talking about. Okay, so let's just see, and then we're going to talk about why you got it right. All right. So here's the first question. I think it'll show here at the end. Okay, let's see the answers here. Look at that. Most of you all got that correct. Why? Why'd that happen? How'd you all know that? Love to see in the chat. What are your thoughts? Why did so many of you get that correct? What do you think? I don't know if anybody has any David LaFleur artwork or not, but why did the majority of you get that correct? Any thoughts there? Well, yeah, okay, fair enough. You actually covered it, Jennifer, right there. Yeah, so a clue is in the stem. I call this the Jeopardy question. So no one please tell my partner. It's a secret. But the reason I do pretty decent on Jeopardy from my couch, not saying I do well in person, is because of the way they write the questions. There's usually a clue in the question. And so here, having bag in the stem, and STEM meaning question, and having bag as a potential response pretty much I don't know, educated guess rather, that it's going to be sandwich bags. So we do that sometimes to be cute. We do it because we see it on a show like Jeopardy, but you want to be really careful not to give subtle hints like that, because really what you're doing is you're really encouraging people to guess. And depending on, and I know this is obviously an example, but depending on the content, what if that was something really critical for someone to know? Well, I would argue it probably shouldn't just be a multiple choice question, but that's a different topic. But I mean, how would you, if this was, you know, again, going back to our e-learning example, if we just had the report out that, you know, people got 100% on this, how would we know who actually knew it and who guessed in something like this? It's something that you really, really need to consider. Okay. All right, let's keep going here. Let's look at the leaderboard here. J-Rock, you shouldn't play. I mean, you've seen this before, but anyway. All right. All right, so here's our next question. I'll turn it down a little bit. At least it's loud in my ears. I don't know about yours. Oh, that's really cool. I have to say I got these from Ripley's Believe It or Not, so I don't know how widespread they're known. Okay. All right, so the majority of you got that right as well. How'd you know? Love to hear your thoughts in the chat. How'd you know that that was the correct answer? And how many of you, I mean, it looks like most of you knew it wasn't Utah or Nevada. Like, was there any clues there? What are your thoughts? I'm sure, J-Rock. Yeah, Lauren, yeah. So there's a grammatical cue, right? So and at the end indicates that it could be an Oregon farm. And with that, it is, you know, gives you a clue that that's what it is. Now, you could be a little bit tricky. You really have to be what I call a grammar hammer to not pick the Utah, because, you know, that also starts with a vowel. But yeah, so the syntax here gave you a clue that that is the correct answer. Yeah, fair enough, Pete. All right, let's look at the leaderboard now. All right, Olga. All right, awesome. Okay, here's another one. I'm hitting the wrong button. There we go. All right. Okay, most of you got that one right as well. Why? How did you guess that one? What stood out to you on this one? So the backstory, if you're curious, the backstory is he was visiting the United States during the Prohibition era, I believe. And so in order for him to go to the United States, he wanted his alcohol. And that is the backstory of this, if you're curious. Okay, Jennifer says this one was harder. Okay, excellent. So this one, usually what happens when you write questions like this and how people do, absolutely, Laura, you got it, syntax, right? So if you have something that like is completing a sentence, what a lot of people do is they'll, you know, kind of read them in order and see what makes the most sense. And so in this one, if you read it, unlimited amounts of alcohol, even though, again, I know it's kind of a weird sentence, it's the best one here because it's like doctor advising if he'd stop washing his hands, that makes no sense. Advising sleep for 8 hours a night, that sounds a little weird. Advising exercising, it doesn't go right? So again, something as simple as grammar and syntax and writing can have people guess the correct answer. Okay, so I just want you to think about that as well as your writing questions. All right, J-Rock back on top. All right. I feel like this could totally be like driving music in a 90s video game. It's pretty appropriate. All right, Ken Burkett. Anybody a Ken Burkett fan? Know about his Lincoln Town Car? Okay, let's take a look. All right, so this one is it's covered in gold-plated pennies, and the reason that this is basically one that you could guess the correct answer is so often, especially in our training, we train and talk about what often the exceptions. And so when we use words like always, never, only, it can be an indicator that there might be that one exception to the rule. And so you can usually guess that if it doesn't have that, that there might be a correct answer. So of this, it's covered in gold-plated English pennies is the one that didn't have those absolutes in there. So be careful when you're doing that. So sorry about that. Sorry if there's an issue with that with the submissions. Oh, weird. Okay. Admittedly, I have had issues with this platform today. I actually had to rebuild all of this today. So it ate my presentation. Is that a thing? Okay. All right. What about this one? Yeah, you just have to ignore him, Jennifer. But I'm glad he could show up after getting a 100 on his e-learning that he's here. So that's good. All right. Any John Audubon fans in the house? All right. So this one's pretty classic. This one is the longest answer choice is the correct answer, right? So this one you looked at it, you're like, I don't know, like, oh, well, this one's really long and specific, so it's got to be the correct answer. And often when we're writing assessments for learning and development, this can happen when we have what I call the really passionate subject matter expert that wants it to absolutely, unequivocally be ironclad correct. Okay. And so they want to give all that additional context to it. But then the devil of it is this one's so long. These other ones kind of stick out as well, they're kind of throwaways or giveaways, right? So you could actually fix this pretty easily if you drop, everything kind of after steal. So created a fake species for rivals to steal. It's a little bit shorter, right? But yeah, you have to also really also consider what these are. I think J Rock actually makes a good point, and I can't believe I'm saying that, but disappearing for 2 years, yeah, that might be a little bit of one that's not plausible, right? So and I'm still waiting for Rockstar Games to make Grand Theft Horse. I don't know if that's coming anytime soon. Hopefully it is. Red Dead Redemption 3 Grand Theft Horse, it could happen. So okay. All right. Okay. 2 more. We're almost done, and then we're going to talk about scenarios. All right. Anybody a fan of the emoji snake? It's a real thing too. All these are real. I know someone fact checked me earlier. These are all real. But don't feel like you have to do that now. I'm actually going to give you a link that you can fact check it a little bit quicker. All right, emoji snake. Okay, this one was a little bit more tricky. So 2 things with this one. So 8 years is the correct answer. Usually when you have durations like this, they are in order, which that's good. It's never a good thing cognitively to have things kind of mismatched out of order. It messes with people sometimes. So if you can put things in sequential order, if you have something like this, but usually what they'll do is they'll split kind of the difference. So we know unless there's some, I don't know, some cave painting somewhere with smiley faces or something that 80 years and 88 years probably isn't correct because emoji are digital, emoticons, if you will. So that would help 8 be the correct answer, 8 years rather. So, be careful with that. Yeah, 8 months sounds kind of plausible, but I don't know how long like the breeding cycle or anything of snakes are. That's a little bit scientific, but yeah. Okay. All right. Oh, I had to jump up. And then it's our last one here. All right, I wish it would come in a little bit quieter. All right. I feel like I've heard that name before, John Autobahn. I don't know though. I think it might have been because J-Rock was talking about his highway in Germany. That's probably why I knew, but yeah. All right, give you a second here. Okay. All right. Most of you got that right because you were able to deduct that from a previous question. That's what I call the Gwen Stefani or the Hollerback girl, that you have the answer in a question that was previously stated. So there was a question about a prank on a fellow ornithologist, John Audubon. You could go back and reasonably deduct that he is a peer, meaning that John Audubon was an ornithologist. So yep, absolutely. I call it the Gwen Stefani. I'm sure there's a better word for it, but that's what I call it. Okay, so let's see who won. Laura, congrats. So reach out to me on LinkedIn and I will give you a prize. That doesn't sound suspicious at all, but seriously, send me a message on LinkedIn. I'll have my LinkedIn contact and I will give you something pretty awesome. At least I think it's awesome, but if you don't like it, we can figure out something else. Okay. All right, so if you liked that, you can actually play the full game. It's on my portfolio at caranorth.net. I made it when I was in higher education. It was made with Department of Education grant money, where you can actually go through, play the full game, and then little Easter egg at the very end. If you make it to the end, there's a little more information button. You can click that more information button, and it gives you a link to all of these stories in Ripley's Believe It or Not, where you can learn more about each one of these, plus see a picture of the emoji snake. So if nothing else, it's definitely worth it for that, okay? So I think I've shown you people can usually guess the correct answer. I think I've shown you that people often don't feel like they are heard or their evaluations mean anything. So I want to give you what I call my best kept secret in making sure that you have better assessments and evaluations. And it's been around forever, but not enough people do it. And it is called the humble the bold task analysis. Okay. And so, what a task analysis does is it really helps break down content into what it is that someone needs to do from a performance criteria standpoint. Okay. There's a lot of ways to do this, by the way. This is just a basic one to get you started. You want to think about the steps of like, what is it that somebody does? Any kind of tools, equipment, supplies that people need in order to do it. But specifically from an assessment and evaluation standpoint, these 3 columns here are your friends, okay? Decisions are going to be the kind of that internal dialogue of like what people are going through as they're going through it, okay? As they're working through the particular performance. Cues would be, how do they know that they're doing it correctly? And then my favorite, Goofy McGoof, how do you mess it up? Now, why would that be important? Well, because those would be wonderful things to assess people on, right? So if you're able to give them opportunities to practice, give them opportunities to understand what these errors could be, it's going to make them stronger in applying the content to their job. So if you need to see this broken down a little bit more, it would be, what is it that you're doing? What's needed to execute? Again, what's kind of that internal dialogue as people are talking when they're going through things? What's the performance criteria? How they know they did it right? And then, Goofy McGoof of, how can people mess it up? See, Lauren? So if you want to see, just another example for learning and development. Let's say that you're creating storyboards for e-learning. So this might be something that we'd fill out, and this has some other ones in it too, of course, but probably one thing you want to do is you want to determine maybe the outcome. In order to do that, you need to align it to what it is that, we said that the point of everything is. What are some different tools and KSAs? Well, maybe we might want some various metrics and information. Decisions, again, we're asking those questions about it. And then what are some errors that you can make in this particular step? Of course, you could talk to the wrong people, rush through, and then the time that it takes. So hopefully it's helpful just to see. Feel free, you can watch the replay, or I believe with AHA Slides, you can get a copy of this if you need it. If not, you can feel free to reach out to me and I can give you a blank copy of this if you'd like. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about scenarios, and I have to say for work-based scenarios, I'm obsessed with Tom Coleman's 3C model, and the 3 Cs are very simply choice, challenge, and consequence. Now, I know Joey Sinart a little bit earlier today did a session around video games. I'm sorry that I missed it. I'll watch the replay, I promise, Joey. But I bet you he probably talked about the way that video games are engaging from a storytelling perspective. And I think video games do a fantastic job of really embodying this 3C model, okay? And so when we're talking about scenarios, we need to know, first of all, challenge. What is it that I'm asked to do? Okay, and I'm going to give you some best practices here in just a moment. Second would be the choices. Okay, now that I understand the challenge, what are my choices for action? And then third would be, what are my consequences, or what is my feedback that I'm getting if I make a wrong decision? Okay, and with these combined, this can really go back to what I talked about earlier, give that additional context to the content that we're delivering, okay? That way people have an opportunity to apply it. They know exactly what's expected of them with the content. And, honestly, you're making them stronger and, again, boosting their confidence, their competence, etc. From it. So 3 C's, choice, challenge, and consequence. Now, I want to talk a little bit more here about scenarios. And I have some different, I want to say, best practices. So the first one is, I think it's really critical to anchor your learner in the scenario. And easy way to do that is you are in their role. Now, I'm not a fan of what I call the reality show scenarios where you have a bunch of different names and roles and titles. And at that point, it becomes reading comprehension. Why do you want to do that to somebody? Are you really testing if somebody can read on the job? I mean, maybe, I guess, in some circumstances, but is that really the point of what it is that you're trying to put across? Probably not. So anchoring them are, you are a manager at blank, you are a whatever at blank, right? So they know exactly their perspective as they're reading through, and that way they're going to be able to answer the question more effectively. Another one is, if at all possible, try to think about this in the workplace and consider a simulation or application. Of course, there's a lot of tools that can help you build that and do that. When in the manufacturing environment, we did this a lot for some of our machines. We would build like a little simulated screen or buttons. We had a really interesting keyboard on one of the machines that we were able to do like hotspots where people would click on the different buttons, and they'd have to do it in a certain order, but they were able to test that in something like this. And that was another great example of a scenario, right? Keeping it as simple and clear as possible, and making the feedback count. Really give them insight as to why the decision was the best one or why it was the wrong one. And also talk about the consequences, right? What happens if you select the wrong decision? What are the long-term impacts of it? Really being as realistic as possible is very, very, very critical. What do you think about creating the scenario with a character? Jennifer, I think it depends, right? I'm of the mindset of as simple and clear and concise as possible is best. And I personally, and this is just my own bias, it doesn't have any research behind it, okay? But I think that if you can say you are blank, to me, it's much more powerful than what would the character do in this. to me, I think there's a little bit of an emotional hook there. So that's why I like to err on this. But I think it kind of depends on what it is that you're interested in. So okay. So quickly, love to hear what are some of your best scenario tips if you have any. I'll give you a moment if you want to add some in here. And then we're going to wrap up with evaluation. So what are some of your best scenario tips? Go ahead and you should be able to add 1 or 2 in here if you like. Or if you don't want to do this, that's fine. You can also engage in the chat, whatever you prefer. Happy to take both. Oh gosh, J-Rock, that's pretty remarkable. Although I didn't watch Survivor from last night. I got sucked into the Vanderpump Rules drama. If you know, you know, if there's any Bravo fans on here. Okay, yeah, making it related to real world situation, absolutely, if at all possible. That context is so critical and gets so missed in a lot of our assessments. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you do decide to branch, and branching meaning kind of jumping around in either the tool or whatever, making sure that you have what I call an anchor, and so people can go back to is very good. Conversational, great. Mere reality as close as possible. I'm sorry, Ricky, I'll get caught up on it. And I love that. Yeah, Anne Marie, rip it from the headlines. So make it, kind of realistic. I love that. Yeah, and demonstrate reactions for not taking. Oh, I love that too. Yeah, yeah, the mistakes that other people have made. Safe environment to fail. Absolutely. Go ahead and let this last one pop up, and I'll keep going here. Okay. Don't want to lose this person's. Give it a second. Okay, make it realistic. Okay. Thank you all for that. Really great stuff. Yes, I love the common errors as a choice as well. And actual skill prizes. Hey, Yosefe, good to see you. Okay. So this is probably another hot take, but I'm a firm believer that you can't assess or evaluate without knowing what to measure. And so if you skip a good needs assessment, I will not quit beating this drum. You're not going to be able to properly assess or evaluate. All right. So you have to get that alignment on the front end to know exactly what it is that you are expected to do and how this is going to apply back to the content that you're going to be providing. Absolutely have to. Otherwise, you really cannot properly assess or evaluate. So let's talk here about what some of the common evaluation metrics are. And we talked a little bit about it in the Tells of the Two Johns, but obviously one is going to be course completion and attendance. But boy, what does that actually tell you? Really? I mean, does it really tell you a whole lot about the evaluation or, again, how people responded to it? No. All right. But not just these, there's some more here. For evaluation, a lot of them are the net promoter or on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this, and the smile sheet of, hey, did you like it? How was the food? How was this? So you're not getting a lot of data here, right? So there are ways to make it a little bit more engaging. Highly, highly recommend. This is not sponsored in any way. Will Fallheimer's work around performance-focused smile sheets. That book changed my life. I truly mean that. I should have like a affiliate code or something to that, but I do really, really love it because he has some really great questions there, especially around how confident people feel in applying it to the work that they do. I implemented that question in the manufacturing environment. That question got me a promotion as well as more resources for my team, just that single question, because people really wanted to be heard and valued. And it's, again, I'm not paid to say that's truth. That's exactly what happened. Yeah, how likely are you to recommend the smile sheet to a friend? Good question. So to evaluate, just like I said, we have to get alignment on success criteria. It should always be the first step, right? Why are we doing this? Why are we taking time and resources to build? And what does that look like? Because, like I hinted in the very beginning, this doesn't all have to be on us, you all, in L&D. We can't do it all, truthfully. So once we have that alignment, we need to know who's doing what by when, in the sense of after somebody attends a training or after somebody, goes through an e-learning or whatever, how are they getting supported? And you know who your best friends and advocates are on this? Your frontline leadership. And so, how do you support them? One thing that I instituted in a place that I worked at was I knew that they had regular meetings with their directs, just sending talking points about the training. Hey, it's been a week after you did the training on widgets. Here's some additional context. What questions do your folks have about it that we can further support? Revolutionary. I'm talking to people is good, right? But knowing that people are asking, people are caring, that is really, really critical. And it can't always be us because we often have limited resources and time as well. But these people are being paid to manage people. Let's help them manage people. And a part of managing people is helping people perform better at work and helping people succeed at work. And so we do have, I feel like, an obligation to support that, but we shouldn't be carrying that burden totally, in my opinion. I'll get you the link here in a moment. All right, so sample metrics, if you're looking to kind of upskill again your evaluation, is going back to those key performance indicators in your business. You know those better than I do. Customer service could certainly be one. Could be amount of widgets sold, widgets put out the door. Thank you, J-Rock, for that. But here's another spicy take here. It could also be tied to people's performance goals. I facilitated a project management certificate this morning for ATD, and I had somebody in the course say that one of the biggest factors of buy-in and success that they've seen was being able to tie certain components of I guess, performance to people's performance goals. Now, I know, again, I'm really pushing here, but there are organizations that care about that. And being able to, I guess, map that out, that would be another way to make people more accountable and give people, again, more, I guess, incentive to care and do the best that they can. And then, of course, longitudinal, any way that we can check and track the performance over time, that's also going to be great to add. Okay, so in conclusion of assessment evaluation, if you're saying, okay, what is it that I need to just cut out and just get out? I'm going to say these are some things that you should trash, okay? So we've talked about almost all of these. The only one I didn't really touch on a whole lot was the cutoff score of 80%. Have you ever thought why it's 80%? Any thoughts there? I think it's because people assume that's the cutoff score. And truthfully, if you're doing, I'd say, really deep psychometric analysis of assessment, you would actually basically run a pilot test and test your items and see what were really easy, what were really hard. You cut those out and then you have a bank and then you would determine the cutoff score there. But I know nobody's really got time for that. But I don't think that it should always be 80%. I think there's some instances that it should probably be 100%, but I also don't think it should always be an summative assessment at the end that is that piece. So yeah, that's what I would trash if I were you in your upskilling that you're going to be doing next week. And please let me know if you do it next week. I really, really would appreciate that. And with that, if you want to get in contact with me, here is where to do it. Again, thank you, Tom, and sorry for the extra few moments over, but really appreciate you and everything that this conference does for people. And yeah, thank you so much for spending some time with me today.
That's awesome. Thank you ever so much. We finished with a camel. How lovely. Look at that. Well, you can see on screen, you've got all Cara's contact information, so reach out to her. I'm repeatedly told to tell you she's not very nice, but it's quite difficult at the end of that session to go, she's horrible, she won't help you. It's clearly not true. So that's it. I could just stop the recording there, wouldn't it? That'd be a fantastic end to the whole event. No, but thank you all so much for attending this year. It's been our biggest year ever for iDTX. I need to say a humongous thank you to all the speakers, everyone who attended, all the patrons who make it possible, but also for the first time, and much to my mental panic across these 3 days, we've had sessions that I haven't hosted. So a massive thank you to Joey Sinat, Joe Suarez, and Ricky Fisher, who very ably presented or hosted sessions on the Zoho stage across all 3 days, did a fantastic job, combated some tricky technical issues, but overcame them all. So thank you to you three for making this larger than usual event possible. All the recordings will be up by tomorrow morning. In fact, pretty much all the recordings are up now. I've just got a couple that I need to upload, and of course, this session. Feel free to share those. They're there publicly. They're free for everyone to have access to. And over the next couple of days, you may get an email from the Hopin platform itself asking you for some feedback about the sessions, how the tech worked, how the sessions were. If you could take the time to fill it out, I'd really appreciate it, and it help us shape future events. But that really is it now. So until 2024, we shall see you later.